My name is Tshepo, and I'm founder and CEO of Metacode. Oh, let me just go into full screen mode. I'm founder and CEO of Metacode, and we're doing enterprise code search. So the problem we've identified is that navigating large code bases is really difficult. In fact, the best technology we have for it is like decades old plain text, slow keyword search. And a good sort of analogy to the situation that we're in terms of code search is like pre-Google internet search. So it's not great. So our solution is fast, intuitive, just much better code search. And there's sort of like a few dimensions in which we sort of improve code search. The first is just make it super fast, right? So if you're searching over a large code base, multi-gigabyte code base, it can be super slow. So we solve that problem. Number two is that we also introduced this new paradigm for searching, which is natural language search. So intuitive code search so that you're able to basically make intuitive queries when you're searching your code. And without further ado, I'll jump into a demo to show you what that looks like. Awesome. All right, so we're in Metacode right now. And this is the kind of part for the course, normal regular expression search, but you'll find that it actually works a lot faster in Metacode. So for example, let's say we wanted to find some input statements across these things, across these files. And I might make a regex query like this, and whatever, it resolves in almost 100 milliseconds per query per keystroke. But let's say we were looking for something in JavaScript files, TypeScript files. You can narrow it down. You can, no matter how pathological no matter how pathological your regex query gets, but you can make some pretty pathological queries and get super fast search. Another modality is semantic code search, which is natural language code search. And let's say you wanted to say, I don't know, delete file. So if you look at the sort of results here, you'll see obviously delete file and stuff like that. But you also see the semantic sort of similarities. So you'll find, for example, saved files, delete file, stuff like that. So remove file. So even if that keyword doesn't exist in that exact query, you can still resolve it. All right, so going back into the presentation. This is, as I said, made for the enterprise. So we have on-prem, cloud, and IDE solutions. Our cloud solution is almost out. You can expect that soon. It's super fast, as we said. Quick setup, under 5-minute setup, super simple. Metacode is intelligent enterprise code search, and you can check it out at metacode.app, and there's my email. Thanks.
Great, Tshepo, thank you for sharing and for the demo. Okay, so as the founder of Superhuman, I obviously believe in 100 milliseconds search. No need to convince me of that. Something that I'm less convinced about, though, is this idea of natural language search. I'm curious why you decided that this is a problem and that people want to search this way, especially developers.
Yeah, so the canonical example I give is, say you're a new developer to a large company. How do you get onboarded really fast? Typically, there's really no good way to do that. It's either you're talking to a bunch of engineers and then giving you a tour of the code base, or you're taking that upon yourself and sort of learning the code base on your own that way. Natural language search sort of solves that problem from the jump. So it allows you to be able to make the kinds of queries you might make into Google if you were searching Google for something, but over code, right? So you wouldn't know the exact keywords, for example, that pertain to whatever part of the code base that you wanted to make edits to or traverse. And that's what natural language search gives you, the ability to traverse code you're otherwise unfamiliar with.
So I think that makes sense, but it sounds like there's an assumption being made, which is the way that people search Google is via natural language search, which I'm not sure is actually the case. But I haven't answered it myself, but just pointing out there is that assumption. Is it
fair enough.
This from the text editors that people are already using?
Yeah, so we have an IDE solution, but it turns out that once you're using this in an IDE environment, the size of the code base you're searching over actually isn't that large. And so most of your queries tend to be kind of targeted queries. So when I look at the analytics logs for the kind of searches people make when they're using the IDE extension, they make super precise queries that are really targeted to, I want to teleport to this part of the code that I already know anyway. But in a much larger code base environment, you'll see more explorative queries. So we do have solution, but it's just not quite as useful in a local machine IDE environment.
Interesting. Okay, so you think that the primary way that this will be used isn't necessarily from the IDE, but it's in a much larger technology organization. Developer maybe wants to search hundreds of repositories at once to find.
That's right.
Okay, interesting. This sounds quite a lot like the environment that we had back at LinkedIn, which is exactly like you were describing, many hundreds of code repositories and tens of millions of lines of code, if not more. Is there a technology moat here that you think is real, or
So we think the technology. So the technology is kind of rather straightforward. So whenever I talk about it, I'm sort of so we're using basically this thing called word2vec. It basically learns basically the vectorization of all the keywords you use in your code base, and then allows you to basically match those keywords against whatever your query was, right? So it basically allows you that semantic search to happen. But I don't think that's quite a moat. What we think is the moat is the data. So the main reason Google is really great at search isn't really because our algorithm is super great at finding the most relevant part of the internet that you search for just based on your query. It's also based on what people are clicking, right? It's based on page rank. And so we think that the actual moat here is basically the data that we get from companies, people using this at companies, selecting whichever code that was their correct results, and actually providing much better ranking in comparison to what anybody else would do. So as we build up, as people use Metacode more often in some company, we just get way better at relevance, and I think that's a key moat, I think.
I think it's worth pointing out that the Google strategy was at the very least two-step. In the beginning, data wasn't leveraged, it was PageRank, and PageRank was significantly better than everything that came prior, so that they could then collect the data to do the next step. In order to collect the data, the initial thing has to be 10 times better than what And 100 millisecond search across all your repositories might be that. Natural language search might be that. But if I were you, I would just get sort of 100% confident that the thing you're building in the absence of data to increase health is still
so there's a bunch of tricks we do, and the long story short is that we actually look at how often, for example, a function is called throughout the code base, and we'll rank those results much higher if that happens to be one of the candidate results. So there's stuff like that.
Okay, that makes sense. And then lastly, what's the business model?
So the business model is straightforward. So most enterprise products like this will say something like, we'll charge per engineer per month, and that's how we want to charge, $25 per engineer per month. Right now, we have a few customers, none enterprise though. Most of our customers are actually just using the IDE version. Anyway, the purpose of this pitch is actually to just get more enterprise interest. So that's where we're at.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure you will. I can speak from personal experience of having worked in an extremely large code-based environment. I know that this would be useful. I think it's one of those interesting companies that is, as you say, primarily useful for enterprises. Most SMBs and startups, the entire code base fits on every individual developer's machine. And so I think my final piece of advice there would be, companies have such a thing as DNA. They end up growing up to be good at the things that the original founding team is good at. And so if this truly is an enterprise company, I'd start getting people on the team who know that world super well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, will do. Awesome.
Awesome.